Hello there. Thanks for watching this video. My name is Jan Duijers, Integration Architect. I'm specialized in Azure and Boomi integration development. Now over 8 years of experience, and today I'm going to have a very nice demonstration, I hope. During my years as integration architect, I have seen quite some implementations of Boomi, and somehow people miss the fact that you have to set up your functional and technical tracing to be able to properly track your integrations. So that's where we will focus on today. I believe this is the most complete video you will find. I haven't found any end-to-end demo anywhere. Just know that this will be a short video. I will make a more hands-on video where I'm actually going to deep dive into every little component of Boomi and showcase exactly what is set up there. So you can just copy paste everything and it will work. And I will also make a blog about it where I go in all of the details, where you can also find all of the example messages I use in my integration. But yeah, that's for the other video. Let's get started. I'm going to explain to you what we actually are going to do. Imagine we have an order that goes from system A over Boomi over Azure API Management to system B. What we will use to have our tracing, we will have Boomi tracked fields. So we are going to log the order ID and we are going to log the customer ID and some other properties. Next to that, for every step we take, so when we start the process, receive the order, we started to transform the order, and also when we start to, after we send the order, we are going to, yeah, to have our tracing in Elastic, and all of our APIs, which we call, are going to happen over the Azure API Management. We are going to perform schema validation within the Azure API Management, and we will have our Azure Application Insights enabled, so we have full visibility in our API traffic. Well, that's the scope for now. Let's get started. A lot to say, a lot to show. Let's go. This tracing looks like. After that, I will elaborate on each step of the process where we do what, how we come to the result of this awesome functional tracing. I have an order over here in JSON. I'm going to imitate now that I'm system A pushing something to Boomi over Azure API Management to system B. And because this is the success message without an issue, it should work. So let's get started here. Later I will showcase this one. This one does not contain an order ID, so it will fail. Process. It will take some time because yeah, I have some sandbox environment. Okay, so it now triggered our main process, which is going to handle it, but we are not very much interested in that yet, because we want to know what happens with the process from our tracing point of view. Because normally Boomi is quite a black box, and you need a good developer to build in tracing, not a lazy one, because then at a certain point you have no idea what is actually happening. So our process succeeded, I see over here, but normally I don't know which process it is. So we need to search on it. Because I use tracked fields within Boomi, I can search on certain metadata, which we defined as a tracked field. Luckily, we were so smart to set up an order ID as a tracked field. So what I can do is I can post my order ID we just launched. It was this one. And in this case, we are going to search over these tracked fields. And we see over here that this is our process. So this is very handy if a business user has a question about order X. We can use this mechanism to search within Boomi. So we found a process. A technical person who knows Boomi can really use this to deep dive to see what happened where, why did something go wrong. We can see which connectors are called. We can see the full stack trace. So that's very handy, but yeah, a bit technical. So that's the first part. So that's this. Next, I build in a specific yeah, a tracing component, which actually pushes a lot of tracing into Elastic. So I have here a really simple Elastic dashboard, or it's not even a dashboard, it's just a table out of a tracing message. And I can fill in here, for example, the order number. And we can now exactly see from functional perspective what did happen with the order flow. So we see that system A got transformed into system B. We received the order and the order was created in system B. This is very handy if you want to search. In this case, it was the metadata value, but yeah, imagine you have some other ID you can use, or you have, for example, the correlation ID. You can say over here, correlation. Relation ID. Oh, I didn't pick it up. That's strange. Ah, I forgot the where. That's my mistake. There we go. So it has, of course, the exact same result. We also see the other custom metadata field which we added. So imagine they have a question which customer the order is from. We can also search on the customer like this. So we can see the full stack trace of all of the orders of this customer. Very, very handy. So that's the Elastic part. You can of course build a dashboard on top of this. You can do a trend analysis. Within the Elastic, you can set up alerts. So if something has a status error, you will see it over here as an error. And you can say, I want to send out an email based on that type of logic. But this is the basic demonstration, so I want to keep things a bit easy. Now, so that is the second part. So this was the Elastic. And then within our API management, we have application insights enabled. So what we can actually see is we can see all of our API calls which were performed. And for example, I see over here that system B got a successful API call at 9:24. These are all the headers. This is a request body which is pushed. So that's very handy, and we got the 201 back. So in this case, it's a happy path. Everything is good, no action needed. Of course, we can also have an unhappy path, and in my opinion, that's the most important one because that's where the business can be impacted. Okay, we are now going to start with the unhappy path. So now we don't have an order ID. I also, wait, I'm going to make a bit. Looks good. Let's make the customer a new customer number that you see it's this one specifically. So the process is initiated over here. We can go over here again, and instead of something green, we actually see now over here in Boomi that we have a process that failed. We don't have order ID. We didn't get it from the star body on purpose, of course, but we do have the customer ID. And over here in the action, we actually see why it failed, because we have proper schema validation set on our Azure API Management. We see that the order ID is not set. Got the status 400 for it. So that's what we already see over here. And we as Boomi maintain our architects, developers. We can set alerts all based on these type of errors. But we can also use our tag fields. I want to search on the customer ID in this case. And you see, I already found my order. So if someone has a question, why didn't that order for that customer got pushed, we can search back like this. And in this case, we get the process again and we see over here the reason why it failed. So that's that part. I go back to Elastic again. And I'm going to do the same thing. The business has a question about where's the order for that customer. And we can search on it. So we see we received the order, we transformed the order, but it failed. So that's very handy. Back to the tracing in Azure App Insights. Go out of this one. And I'm going to refresh it. Oh, I need to push down a bit to the right. There we go. So instead of searching manually like this, what I can also do is I can put in the request or response body. It took a bit of time for the App Insight to get the value, but now it got it. So you see I can just search on the customer number here, and I see over here the transaction. This was the one which failed on purpose, as we mentioned. And we see also the message over here why it failed. So in this case, the order ID is not matching for the schema of the order ID. And we see here the request body. As you see, there's no order ID, and that's why it failed. So in this case, it would be very handy to tell the business the order ID was not given. We need to resend it, resubmit it with an actually order ID. It can be the guy on the Boomi side who sent it, or the guy on system A, that someone needs to take ownership of that. That's that part. This was the tracing part. So what we have seen so far is the track fields, the Elastic, and the App Insights. And now I'm going to dive a bit more into Boomi. It will not be too much depth. It will be just mainly on how the tracing is set up. So what we see over here is that I have track fields enabled. This was the part where we search on the Boomi side. I can control on every connector that I set these, so we have better visibility. But it's important someone takes ownership of that. When I start the process, I always set a set trace properties. This is just copy paste for every integration. And I set some default things. If I can receive a correlation leaf from a process before, I try to reuse it. So we have a chain of the same correlation ID. If it's a batch process, for example, I just say get a unique value over here. Same for activity ID. We have an interface code, so very easy to search. The name of the interface, the source system, target system, the domain of the integration, and a lot of extra properties, which are handy whenever we are going to do some investigation, or if you, for example, want to embed AI in your monitoring process to be able to find back the exact runtime resource process to do the investigation on. An important one to understand how the tracing also works is the DPP schema version. It's set to 1, and you will see why I do that. I do a try catch over here. So how I handle my tracing is all my positive things are within the process. If there's an error, I throw an exception. You will see that. And then my catch will make sure that that catch message is pushed into the error message of the tracing. So here I push my try catch message. I say my parent status is failed. It's an error. Status is failed, and we have the end timestamp over there. Well, first I go to the positive route. So in my Boomi process, I set some metadata. I can put this whenever I get some data in the process I want to search on in my Elastic. I can add them over here. As you see, I put my order ID and my customer ID over there. Then I have here a process where I'm going to say that we received the order from system A. This is just the info field. And a bit later we do the same thing and we set it to transformed. And we do some mapping, but that doesn't really matter. And I have a process route over here. And in that process route, you see I go for the route send trace to the ASB, so to our queue. In this route, I have three options, or two options. So this is the positive one, and this is the generic catch-all. So when a process fails, I use the catch-all. And when a process succeeds, I use the send trace to ASB. I mentioned the DPP schema version is a bit important because at this time we defined a schema for our error handling, but in the future it may be change. So I on purposely set this to 1, and maybe it will change to 1.1 because we added some extra fields, and in this way we can keep our tracing backwards compatible. So I set my activity ID over here, and then I have my trace message. I will make sure in my blog all of the messages will be placed there as a schema. So it will be the exact same as I have over here. This is also what I use in real life production scenarios because this really helps me to deep dive sufficiently. And I know some people like smaller messages, but for my opinion, this is a one-time setup and it's very valuable to have a lot of information. So here we actually map that set trace for my initial process. So the values we set over here, together with the values if something succeeds or fails, we set it over here into our trace message. And then we put it into the queue. So we have a trace queue that actually pushes the message from the queue into the Elastic. So it is decoupled as we want. As I mentioned, I have two processes, the generic send and I have the catch. And it is exactly the same. The only difference between the two processes is that in the catch one, I have a branch with a catch over here. And I will push the trace message as the current data. So whenever we are in the Boomi processing, we see this trace message as an error. So very handy to see from Boomi perspective that it failed. That's that part. And last but not least is the pushing to the Elastic. So here we have a process, it listens to the queue, it posts the message to the tracing. Oh, I see the name is not correct here. That's my mistake. Trace table. Now it's matching. Yeah, it's a demo. So here we push it to the API management instance where we have the Elastic behind. So that's that part. So when we are in the main process, I go back there again. I mentioned we first go in to do the happy part. So if it fails, for example, we have here an API. If we get a full 100 back, if the order ID is not added, an exception over here with some information about why we throw the exception. And when we throw the exception, it's catched over here. We can configure the retry count over here. And over here we set the try catch message and that it failed. And instead of that generic one, we now throw the generic catch all. That's that part. This is from quite high level, fast demo perspective, how I set up the tracing. Thank you very much for watching. In the deep dive, I will show a lot more. I go a lot deeper, and I think it's more for the really technical guys to follow it from that perspective. Thank you very much. Please take a look at my website and see you next time. Bye.